Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Bits versus Byte podcast. I am your host, Amr Krigic, and I'm joined today with Murat Özmerd from Flow.ai. He's a CXO at Flow.ai, and they make conversational interfaces through their software product. Hello, Murat.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. It's a real honor to have you here on the show, and I would like to start off with you telling us a little bit about what you are doing at Flow.ai and how you guys started out and what you are doing at the moment as CXO.
Yes, so my background is in user experience design. That's actually how we came up with Flow.ai, me and my co-founder Gijs, who also has a background in user experience design, worked for the same company. And then I left the company, but we stayed in touch. And as a user experience designer and designer in general, you're always looking for the best solutions to interact with your customers. And at that time, I was working at a company, and I was working on a conversation on an app. And the problem with apps nowadays is you got real small screen real estate, and you want to perform complex tasks. And for most of the users, it's really hard to navigate through these apps, especially because they just want to do a simple thing. So we thought, okay, maybe there is a better way, instead of just navigating, just typing or saying what you want, and let the machine understand what you want and perform an action. So that was the problem we wanted to solve in our work as user experience designers. So Gijs and I came together and said, okay, let's see if we can make something that works. And we started prototyping.
Okay.
And from there on, once we were confident that we could make it happen, we thought about, okay, maybe we can turn this into a business and start a company.
Okay.
And that was about 2.5 years ago.
Cool.
And 2 years ago, we founded Flow.ai. And not much later, we were joined by our third co-founder, which is Sander Wubben. And he's a professor at Tilburg University,
Okay.
PhD on natural language processing generation. And together with him, we built the Flow.ai system or platform that makes it super easy for designers, developers to create conversational interfaces with the use of natural language processing.
Okay, cool. And looking at the types of clients that you guys get on your platform, does that differ a lot, or is it mostly just clients that want to create a conversational interface, or are there also clients that need extra service because the market of natural language processing and also conversational interfaces is still very young? What do you see within that market at the moment?
Yeah, so when we started out, our initial goal, an idea was to be a conversational UI company. So using tools that was available to us, creating conversational interfaces for our customers, and eventually we thought, okay, the available tooling wasn't sufficient enough for us. We have to build it for ourselves. So, and the idea was, okay, now our system works for us because we used our own technology to service customers. And now we're going to open up the doors and let everybody use the platform. That was about 7-8 months ago. Okay. In November. We're at almost 4,800 users. So that part is going well. But we also see that a lot of customers they want a solution for their problem,
okay,
and not just the tooling. And so we also partner up with other companies to service their customers, or together companies, or companies come directly to us and we help them with their problem.
Yeah.
And the solutions they typically are looking for is in customer service. Or in marketing, or a complete new concept like a recommendation chatbot for Netflix recommendations.
Okay.
So that the market is still young, but people are getting more savvy in what you can do with conversational interfaces. Now we have voice that adds another possibility, but also another complexity to the whole conversational landscape. And you have to, as a business, you really have to think about what should I use for what platform.
Yeah,
you can't do everything in Alexa, for example, and you don't want to do everything with Amazon Alexa. It has to be really specific use case for that. And if you use a channel like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or your own web chat, then the possibilities are more different than for those voice devices.
Yeah,
and the difference is from when we started and where we are now is that we see that customers really didn't get conversational AI that much. So the first meetings were like, okay, we have something like conversational AI. We explain our vision of our platform and the technology. And the typical questions were, okay, but does it learn itself? Do I have to do something as well? Should I train it myself? And when the answer was, obviously you have to train it, then there were a lot of disappointed faces. Because
they thought it was some kind of magic bullet that just going to learn itself.
Yeah, plug and play. And we see that has changed. So people are much more savvy and they know what the capabilities are. And now we see some better use cases because if you know and understand the technology, the limitations, but also the possibilities, then you can come up with good use cases that solves your problems or helps you with your KPIs or create more happy customers.
And getting back to that moment that you first started, I know when you start as a startup, because you are a startup, right? Do you still see yourself as a startup, or are you more into the realm of really a business, or because it's of course it's hard to define what exactly a startup is, but you're in the first 2 years or 3 years of your company. Do you see yourself as a startup as well, or is it already past that phase?
Yeah, I think, we obviously a startup. We're in our second year, and most businesses fail within 3 years.
Yeah.
So before you pass that barrier, you're just a company and startup.
Yeah.
But we're lucky enough that we're in a space that has a lot of interest.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are using conversational interfaces to, enhance the customer experience, or to better their customer service, assist their customer service agents. So we're in a good field, and we are a startup, but we're thinking about more about what kind of company do you want to be, and how can we differentiate ourselves from obviously a lot of competition. If you purely look at the platform or the software side of our business.
Yeah, exactly. Because how did you go about funding the business? Because when a lot of businesses start out, they of course they want to start out. They have a great idea, but money is always a problem in that sense.
Yeah.
How did you go about that when you first started?
Yeah, because we started out by doing services, basically. We were self-funded. They call it, I think, bootstrapped.
Yeah.
That helped us, fund ourselves and develop our platform. So that part we never had some issues with. In terms of scaling the business, that's where you usually need money for.
Yeah.
So getting through the first phase isn't that hard.
Yeah.
But that's basically how we started, and that's how we still work. We are self-funded, and I think things are going in the right direction that we can still keep doing that. So there is not a necessity for an external funding. But we're still in talks with some venture capitalists and investors, and if there is a good match and we can see we can see eye to eye and we can trust each other, maybe we can get an investment later on.
Yeah, that's mostly for your growth, right? Because
exactly.
you're targeting the international market.
Yeah, our ambition is not just the Netherlands. If
Yeah.
you look at the users that use our platform, it's really diverse in the usage and how they use it, and the languages and countries that it's used in. It's going from Singapore to Turkey to Germany to the US. And one of the largest broadcasters in Canada is using Flow.ai
Okay, cool.
for their Alexa skills as well. Yeah.
Okay. And what do they do? Because just for the purpose of getting a little bit of a feel, what they do with their with Flow.ai and Alexa.
Yeah. So because we made the platform for ourselves, we know how a design process works, and it typically starts out by prototyping.
Okay.
And so our tooling is really super easy to get started with. Just prototype something. So they use it mainly to get customer validation with the prototypes they create in our tooling.
Okay.
And you can see it like this. They create a skill using our platform. They deploy it on Alexa. They test it out with users, and if it works, they port that to Alexa and Google Home.
Okay. Okay.
In the native language of those platforms.
Yeah, and they essentially make the whole conversation flow that they want to have in your product, and then they can publish it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's because it's drag and drop interface. You don't need any technical know-how for that.
Yeah.
So you can have like a creative person or a copywriter or someone who understands the customer or the flow or how the conversation should go.
Yeah.
And then if that once it works, then they can port that to the technology they're using for Google Home and Alexa, because the technology is somewhat different. If you deploy it on Alexa or Google, but you need some technical people for that.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to do something with data.
Yeah.
Designer can't make. Most designers can't make a backend.
No, okay, yeah. So it's mostly when you need data from an external source that you need a developer to come in and create something that can do the call and get the data that you want to give back. Yeah.
So our mission is, of course, to be a platform where you can create one interaction and deploy it on all platforms. So, for example, if you create something that works with voice. But also if you have a screen, for example, a lot of these devices, Google Assistant has, if you have a screen, it will display you more UI elements.
Yeah.
And if you want to use that same interaction on Facebook Messenger or on your web chat, you can do it in our platform as well. So you create one interaction, and depending on the platform, you can display images or UI elements, or just reply with voice.
Okay. And looking at the shift, because there is a shift toward conversational interfaces, how do you think these interfaces will affect the way the users will interact with companies and other software products, for example? So what do you see there?
I think, if you look at conversational interfaces, people are basically used to communicating with these interfaces for 20, 30 years since the coming of SMS, text messages.
Yeah.
So that was basically the first steps in conversational interfaces. You send text messages to each other, and you get a reply back, and you reply back again. Yeah. So people are really used to communicating with systems like that. Well, people to people, but now the same way of interacting people can use with systems. Yeah. And instead of we having to understand how the machine works, so how the UI works, how what kind of commands should we do, what kind of buttons should we click in order to let the machine do something that we want, it's now the other way around. Yeah. So people are used, whether you're 8 or 80, everybody knows how to text message. Yeah. And everybody knows how to speak. Yeah. Most people do. Yeah. So and now with the natural language processing and the AI technology being at that phase that it's good enough to understand language, then you can perform a task and answer questions according to what the people are saying. Yeah. So it's not going to change in terms of the way we interact. It's going to be more natural. Yeah. And people are going to be faster in adapting new concepts and new ways of interacting with businesses, because that's something they already do.
Yeah.
And if you look at what the possibilities of conversational UI will be, you have seen I think the demo of Google with Duplex, where the AI assistant makes a call behalf of you and makes a restaurant reservation or an appointment at a hairdresser.
Yeah, crazy.
You can understand that the other way around, the hairdresser or the restaurant will also have an AI assistant who picks up the phone and takes orders or makes appointments.
Yeah,
so you can imagine that your AI assistant is going to call the AI assistant of the restaurant or the hairdresser, and they're gonna communicate with each other.
Yeah,
and they're gonna do everything. So you're gonna take off the middleman basically, and let you just say to your AI what you want. It's gonna search the web, or it's gonna call some companies to get the job done for you. Yeah. And on the other hand, you'll have companies who take the phone calls, and that can be from a person, but that can also very well be from an AI assistant where they talk to. Yeah. So the communication would be we're gonna have one element in our daily lives that's our digital assistant, whether it's from Google or another company who's gonna be big, or something you create for your company especially. Yeah, that's the way it's gonna be. I think that we'll have an entity that's called the AI assistant in our daily lives.
Yeah, in a broader sense than just doing some stuff, right? So it would, as some people, really high-ranking people, have a personal assistant at the moment. Yeah, it would be a machine that's doing it for you, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be available for everybody. And so with the come of AI and conversational AI, and with the come of these conversational interfaces and AI assistants, everybody's going to be able to have a personal assistant. You know, you saw that the first plane, only the rich could fly. So it's going to be now that it's going to be available for everybody. So it's going to, I think, a lot of people see this as a threat for, society. The bots are going to take over the jobs. But, if you look at it from a more positive perspective, it's going to free up a lot of time for people that they can, put into something that really matters, into their family or in their jobs, focus on the really hard stuff where a human is much better, a human is much better in doing creative stuff, for example. So it's going to free up a lot of more human potential, basically.
Yeah, because I get it. The thing is that what pops into my head as a question is we've seen what smartphones have done to us. Yeah. So it has taken a lot of things that we usually did away from us. Don't you feel that it would make you it would make you a little bit, not dumber, but it will take so much out of your hands that you're essentially not focusing anymore on stuff that you previously did. Yeah,
so it may make you more dependent. That's what you mean. Yeah, I think the smartphone gave us a lot of good. Yeah, but also there is of course something like addiction. Yeah, and I don't see it happening that much, conversational interfaces. It's really more functional, maybe. So I don't think there are people that are gonna talk for hours to Alexa, for example. No. Maybe in the future they will, but it's a smartphone. It's always a distraction. So it's always saying, it's always sending you something. It's always calling for your attention. It's basically nothing different than the old media where you go to your mailbox and there is a folder for a company. Yeah. You open your TV, you watch a movie for 10 minutes and you watch 10 minutes of ads. Yeah. So it's also how marketeers and companies will use these devices and these interfaces to communicate with their customers. Yeah. And if that's not regulated well, you can very well be at the same stage as websites and apps now is they do something either with your data or keep spamming you with marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
But if they can, combine it in a good way, use the conversational interface to enhance their brand awareness and communicate with their customers, like one of our customers, Interpolis, has done. They used, for example, Facebook Messenger with helping their customers better their lifestyle, get better sleep, or something they call digital detox, be more independent of your smartphone.
Okay.
And they use this the channel. It's a marketing campaign, but it also helps. Gives their customers something they can use, mainly to better their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So maybe the way we communicate the campaigning, the marketing will change. Instead of displaying banners, showing ads. Maybe the future of marketing and campaigning is providing customers with something usable.
Yeah.
And that creates brand awareness.
Yeah.
So that can also be have a positive future if you look at it like that. If there's, for example, I know that Alexa or Amazon doesn't really allow you to to do these kind of marketing, because there are no push notifications in the sense that you can push to everyone some campaigning, but and Facebook Messenger doesn't allow that as well, especially the thing that happened with Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
So they're really cautious about that as well.
Yeah.
But we can very much see new concepts and new ways of communicating the message from brands.
There are a lot of companies that are doing the kind of the same thing. They're also creating interfaces where you can make chatbots. How do you look at other companies that are kind of big scale, like Amazon, also going into that space? And why would someone pick your product over, for example, an Amazon Lex or whatever other company that's making the chatbot technology or the interfaces to make a conversational unite?
Yeah. So there are of course Google and Amazon have their channels. It's Alexa and Google Assistant, Google Home. And in order to to get a start, people who wanted to do something with this, they also need their own tooling, obviously. But they Google and Amazon, they also provide SDKs and APIs for third-party developers like ourselves. So, and it's in their best interest, of course. There are a lot of good skills and good apps for Google Home being developed. And so that's, I think, if you compare it with apps, we had companies who did Android and iOS, and it's really hard to do because the mechanisms and the technology works differently. Yeah. And for voice, it's much easier. So it's just voice in and voice out. So it's much easier for companies like ours to create for these different platforms, and we don't necessarily compete with Google or Amazon with because they're important to us because they're a channel, and I think we're important for them because if they use tooling like ours, and we make it easier for companies to use our tooling and deploy it on their platform, that will create more value for them as well.
Yeah, because you integrate with them, right? Because you create a conversational interface within Flow.ai, and then can push it to, for example, Google Assistant, but also Alexa, right?
Yeah. So, and we believe more in conversational interfaces.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you create something, you want to deploy it on Alexa, just Alexa, you can do that. But you can also use the tooling for Alexa for that. But if you say, okay, well, I have created an interaction, but I want to use it everywhere because channels change as well. Yeah. So, for example, if you create something, okay, I want to push this to Google Home. Yeah. And then, okay, the WhatsApp APIs has become available. So what you want to do, you want to create that complete chatbot or conversational interface all over again. So what our platform is basically adding a new channel, and we do all the work for you. So you just plug in WhatsApp, and it automatically works on WhatsApp as well.
Yeah, because the kind of input and output is always the same, right? You're inputting something in text or voice, and then the output will also be in text or voice.
Yeah,
right?
so Google Home will do it in Google Home voice.
Yeah,
and Alexa will do it in their voice. And if you put it on your website, it will be a chat.
Yeah.
But you can also use voice for your own website as well.
Yeah.
You can use voice for your app, but you can also use text for your app. And that's basically it. They expect a sort of format that we communicate with, and we expect some sort of format back. So we do the translation that works on our platform, and we do translation and deploy to all the platforms so they can understand it.
So we touched a little bit about what you see as a future thing because of the personal assistant and seeing that as an AI assistant. What do you see behind that after the whole switch to that conversational interface? Because we're getting to starting to get to know the conversational interfaces, but there is, of course, always a step after that. What do you think that will bring us, and what do you think will be the next step after that?
I think it's really hard to say, obviously, but as these systems get better and better, understand language, dialect, and different languages better, but also understand the context and maybe the emotion that some people have in their voice to act correctly according what someone says, but also how they say it. So that's going to be more the step of expanding on what has started. Natural language processing, understanding is one thing, but then you have things like context and the way people say it. And that's something, conversational AI goes hand in hand with AI and machine learning. And all these technologies combined will lead to something that I don't know what it is, but it's more like, understanding completely what a person says or types just by, looking at the way they type it or the ways they say it. And depending on how they say it, you can answer correctly.
Yeah, so what you're saying is also that the machines are getting smarter. They are starting to understand what we are saying or what we are inputting into them. But there's also something that they cannot, or at least cannot do at the moment, or are starting to get to know that, is also the emotional intelligence, right? So there is a whole emotional thing to how people say some stuff. And I think that's also maybe a part that's going to change as well, right? So they're going to be more. It's going to play into your emotions more, right? So if I'm down and I say play a song, it will probably give me a song to kind of boost my feelings a little bit.
And of course we're coming in the domain of privacy and stuff like that, of course. But if there is like consent, then obviously, it's and it starts by just if you say something in your context, the same thing you say could be completely different than what I say. So, for example, we talked with a company who was doing conversational interface for healthcare. If you have patients and if John doesn't feel well, it's much different than when Alice doesn't feel well, because John has a condition, and if he doesn't feel well, then you have to do something immediately. And that's coming to the data. It's tricky because it's privacy related. It's privacy, but there has to be consent. With the GDPR and what we're doing in Europe, it's much more making people aware that we're doing something with your data. Do you want it? So if people know how companies use their data, for what purpose, I think a lot of people, for some use cases will give their consent. And it's going to have like, for care for elderly people or, someone with a real condition that you can base off how they are talking. Exactly. So maybe an AI assistant can take a look out for your kids, not necessarily as a robot or something like that, but you can see what happens in your house and see how your child is performing, for example. what the talents are, or maybe your child has a condition you don't know about, and the machine can directly compare that to the other cases and come up with advice on how to parent, for example. So the use cases can be, and I think that the next phase is figuring out what the great use cases are, because when we started out by chatbots, everybody was, I want to order a pizza, or what is the weather like in Amsterdam. So those are the usual suspects if you look at, but we're already past that phase. We already know that you can have an AI assistant where you can ask the weather for. It's not something that generates.
Yeah, we've got that with Siri.
And that's like 9 years ago. Maybe 10 years, because that was the first. 9 years ago with the first Siri. But now we're developing great use cases, and machine learning. Purely data. We see a lot of how machines can learn from past things and predict some outcome, and we can see that with natural language processing and conversational AI as well. So once we see that the killer apps that will inspire other companies to take that concept to the next level, and then it will professionalize and we'll get to the where the apps are right now, and then you'll probably see something like Snapchat couldn't have existed if there was no iPhone or a smartphone.
Exactly.
And because it evolved to something professional and the technology got better, then new concepts and new startups and new companies arrived. And I see that same happening for conversational interfaces and voice especially. Because now if you look at the most common voice apps are more like broadcasting, play me some nature sounds or stuff like that. Can be useful, but nothing useful for companies right at the moment. So they have to do something with it, but they don't know what. But the better, the sooner they get started with voice, the faster they can learn. And if it's professional and everybody has a device like that at home, those companies who started out first will be, the leaders.
And what's your view on, because there are a lot of talks going around the presentation that Google did with their technology. What are your thoughts about if, for example, an AI assistant calls you, that they have to make known that they are an AI assistant? Do you think that's necessary, or is that something that you think would have to flow naturally, right? So do they have to identify as a robot to make those calls and stuff like that?
Yeah, we saw the same with bots in customer service, for example. A lot of there were some ideas. Okay, let's make it as incognito as possible. Don't say this is a bot, but pretend it's human. And another vision was that it has to be clear that this is a bot, and then if a human takes over, we'll make sure that the customer knows it's a human. So it depends more on what the companies want and how you develop these conversational AI assistants. But I don't think there is like a rule for that.
So you don't think there needs to be some kind of regulation or whatever regarding that?
I think it's regulations and laws follow the technology. Something needs to happen before they get regulated. I don't know what can go wrong. But maybe some chatbot or a conversational assistant
will do something that's not correct.
Makes an appointment at some shady company and it goes wrong. I don't know. Maybe that can lead to some regulations. But I don't know.
I think it's hard to say, and I get that, because it's still very, very early in the process of because what Google did, I mean, we can talk about it all day long, but it's crazy, right? I mean, it's crazy that some kind of technology can also react the way a human would as well, like giving like small things like it's something that a human would do, and it's almost scary in that sense that they can do that, but also I hear a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of people are saying, okay, we need to regulate this because of this and this and this, and I'm like, okay, but really we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the technology is there. They have made it, but they haven't even brought it out yet. It's the Google Assistant is as far as they go at the moment, right?
And of course Google have a lot of data. So if you look at Google Assistant, they can provide you, if you ask for who's the president of the United States 8 periods ago, it can answer purely on Google search results.
Yeah.
And what they did with Duplex, making appointments with the hairdresser or book a table at a restaurant, it's really a contained domain, of course. And if you look at it like that, it's, there are certain ways a conversation can go.
Yeah.
And it's all about, analyzing how people do bookings and what can go wrong, how people can ask a question and, train the AI assistant to reply to certain inputs like the Duplex did. The most important, or not the most impressive part, I thought it was, there was this person with a heavy dialect. It could understand that. So in terms of, doing something with that voice input and understanding what the person says, that was really impressive.
Yeah, it's
to me.
impressive. Yeah. And just to wrap up, because what I always try to do is give people some advice, and also some advice from your side. When you were starting Flow.ai, what would you say that the biggest thing is that you have learned from that process, from starting up and also creating this kind of product? What would you say that one of the biggest things was?
I think, if you look at the whole lean startup, I think that really works. When we started out, we had an idea for a company and for a product. So what we first did was, create a website where we created some screenshots and described what the product should do with a input field said subscribe now or join the watch list or waiting list. And we saw in a couple of months at 700. And we were contacted by Sony, Vodafone. We didn't even have like a company legally, and definitely not a product.
Yeah.
So that gave us an idea. Okay, that's definitely something with what we sketched out here, what we describe here.
It will work.
There is a market for that.
Yeah.
There is interest in that.
Yeah.
And then it's the trick is to go fast, learn fast. To iterate really fast and constantly validate. Sometimes you have like an idea. Okay, these are my customers, and this is my business, and then you see after 6 months there is no business, or you thought these were my customers, but you find out that customers are more different than you thought.
Yeah.
So that it really helps you to pivot fast and go. What kind of directions the market takes you.
Yeah.
And if you have like a vision, then you can say, okay, I'm going to stick to this and I'm going to pursue this. This will work. But you have to think about, is that the best way to start a business?
Yeah.
So that's basically what we have learned is, develop fast, fail fast, or break fast and develop fast. I don't know.
Yeah.
These kind of terms probably everybody heard about. And, as you go, things get harder and you have to really make some sacrifices, and you really have to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
And you should be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's a competitive market, and you really have to search for what your superpowers are.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do everything that everybody else does, but slightly different.
Yeah.
But really figure out what can you do to make a difference, and to really display your qualities and your superpowers, so you can be better than the other ones.
Yeah. So it's like I heard Guy Kawasaki say one time, get to the next curb, right? So it's getting to the next phase of what you're doing, right, and not just iterating on what already exists. Yeah,
exactly. So what will be everybody just doing that, but what will be the next step?
Exactly.
And the thing also is you see a lot of companies being too early.
Yeah.
And that's something you also take to sometimes you innovate, but the innovation is, it's
you're too far. You can go too far.
Yeah,
as well,
it's you're like 3 years ahead.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's all about timing.
Yeah, the clients maybe are not even in that.
It's all about timing. Timing is really important. If you have a startup, team is important.
Of course,
but timing is also important. If you're too early, then nobody's going to get what you're doing. And if you're too late, everybody's already doing what you do.
It's really hard. Yeah. Okay, I would like to thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And also to the listeners, thank you for listening to this podcast. You can find Bits versus Bytes on bitsvsbytes.com, and also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and SoundCloud. And that's it for now. Thank you.